Hey everyone, it's Justin. Today we're going to talk about Secrets of Power and some cards that have really stood out to me in the FFG spoilers. I think there are a few build around cards that I'm going to look at today, and also some cards that I think will become constructed staples. So I'm excited to share those with you. It does feel like we've been in a set 5 meta for a really long time. So I hope that set 6 will kind of shake things up, and I think it will, looking at some of the early spoilers that we're seeing. And then a little bit of a mixed bag today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Limited, and I just signed up for the sector in Philadelphia. Super excited for that. And I personally love Limited, but I also know it can be an intimidating format, and it's also not the easiest format to practice if you don't have a local game scene or anything like that. So I'm going to share a little bit about just where my process is, my mental process. I also haven't done a ton of drafts or seals. So I'm going to share just the initial wave of prep that I'm doing with you, and talk about sort of what you can do in the next month to get ready for Philadelphia. And then lastly, I'm going to look at a awesome resource that our team found and we've been talking about for a while. You might have already been aware of this, but swoobase.com really is a wonderful resource to look at meta-analysis and just how decks actually match up against each other. So I want to share that and preview that and give also swoobase.com a shout out. So let's jump in with the first spoiler that has me the most excited for Secrets of Power, and you can see I'm excited. So is the character of this card, Miss Price, that you can see to my left. And to me, she is a combo enabler. This game outside of the Bothan Network Kylo deck that kind of took Worlds by storm doesn't have a ton of combo decks in it. And she potentially combined with Grand Admiral Thrawn has me thinking, right? Obviously, Grand Admiral Thrawn doubles the when defeated ability, so you'd be doing 8 damage. But then she also triggers off of, like you can defeat a friendly unit, so you'll also get that trigger just one time. You wouldn't be able to double that with Thrawn. Well, if he's flipped, can you? I have to look at the front side of him. But basically, you're looking at doing 8 damage and then having another when defeated ability, or you're sacrificing something like, a token and you're not really losing too much velocity. But 8 damage to me pushes this past sort of like that's cool, it's 4 damage, it's a little bit aggressive, but like, whoa, that's a big chunk. When you combine that in the colors, you can play like cards like Ruthless Raider and Devastator, which can just do massive burn damage to your opponent's base. That really has me thinking. So the downside, the sort of cost associated with it is significant. You have to sacrifice one of your own units, so 2 units are dying. But I think if you're able to create your deck with either enough small units that you don't mind that they die, a token enabler, maybe these new spy tokens that we're seeing, or you've just got all these when defeated abilities that trigger, and you're able to cause just sort of such value that actually losing 2 units isn't too bad. And you look at, there's a lot of sort of interactions within these color pairs and within these when defeated abilities that really work pretty well. You've got Krennic making your cards cost less. You've got Chimera, triggering these abilities when your units actually aren't getting defeated. So there's just a whole bunch of really neat things you can do with Price, and I'm excited to explore with Thrawn. I think Thrawn is really the key here because turning that 4 to 8 is just so massive. All right, next up is this leader, I believe, came out this week, Dedra Miro from the awesome show Andor. She's an aggressive leader. I mean, in a perfect world, she attacks for 4 on the 4th resource turn. That's incredibly strong. And you see a 5 toughness, which is great because oftentimes the aggressive villain leaders that come out earlier haven't had this 5 toughness threshold. Like if you look at Kylo having 4, it was really difficult. Von Reg had 5, but he was more situational on a TIE fighter type of thing. But I think with Dedra, I'm excited to build with her with Tarkin Town. Double red Tarkin Town. It feels like it's sort of always been there. It's had some success. We've seen some double red Sabine, double red Kylo, but it does feel like it's sort of almost there, right? And for Dedra, I think that she could be the leader that pushes it past that finish line. There's a lot of really cool interactions there. Red can draw cards. You've got the first turn, 1-drop, Tarkin Town, or draw a card thing. If you draw just one card with her, you're most likely going to have raid. You'll most likely have more cards than your opponent, or you'll have more units than your opponent because you don't have the raid, but they've done the damage and you've been able to use the Tarkin Town. So I think she's quite strong. I'm also excited to try her with plot. She'll be, if you think about an aggressive plot, if there's a plot upgrade, you put it on her. Now you haven't used a card from your hand, so you might have more cards in your hand than your opponent. So now she's attacking for 4 with the raid, and if it was an upgrade, you're able to attack for even more. So that's something I'm excited to try out. And yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to gain a card in this game. There's that ship. It's a 1/1 that draws a card. There's various options. It is one interesting thing is that if you combine her with just like an actual spell that draws a card, like there's one card from set 1 that says draw 2 cards or what have you, then she becomes really strong. There is a downside of like Kiadi Mundi just turns her off, but I think early in the game you should be able to attack with her and then hopefully kind of go from there. All right, these are 4 cards that I think are going to see constructed play. Some of them have been talked about in other videos and stuff like that, but some of them I think have gone sort of hiding in plain sight. So the first one I want to talk about is Unveiled Might. First of all, the art on that card is really, really sick. But a plot card, I think this card on a Dedra, on a Sabine, on even a card like a Lando from set 1 or a Von Reg, I think is really strong. You get to play this card onto your leader, and if you have an aggressive, we've all seen the power of the Darksaber in Sabine ECL, and this sort of has that combined with Smuggle. It's not as strong an upgrade to your power, but if you can keep your leader out for a bit, it's going to be really strong. Another card interaction I want to talk about with Unveiled Might is in a weird deck like a Han Green Force, because nothing says that you have to match up your plot with your leader's flip cost, right? So I think a lot of people are looking at the plot costs and they're kind of matching them up with their leader costs. So like for Unveiled Might, you might be looking at Sabine, or you might look at Von Reg or the new Dedra. But imagine putting this on Han, who's kind of always been sort of an iffy unit, but then you've got a Force unit out and you can cast Force Throw. So that seems pretty strong to me, being able to make your Han a 5/9. And then he kind of just gets in there, right? He gets in for 5, gets in for 5, gets in for 5. And, I don't think anybody wants to see more Han Force cards. But that being said, I think we'll see Unveiled Might in a lot of constructed ideas in decks. And I wouldn't just limit your plot cards to match your leader flip costs. Top of the Summit, I think, is incredible. I think Kira, this was a card from I believe it was the Swoop Racers and Sip and Benton. They talked about this card, but this card is sick in Kira. Basically wipes the board, gives you a 7/1. I'm excited to see Kira red. I think an aggressive blue-black villain, blue-red villain aggressive deck with Kira attacking for 7. There's so many cool interactions you can do with that. Is really neat. You can play more grit cards. And, think about is there a way to shield something and then give yourself another unit that has a ton of grit and attack for the 7/1. So yeah, some really neat things that you can do with Topple the Summit. Captain Typho, sort of this was the card that I was mentioning when I said hiding in plain sight. It's a little cut off here, but he is a 4/5 Sentinel for 4. That is just such a giant stat line, and he's a Sentinel, and you have the ability to reveal cards from your hand to gain life. So I feel like he's sort of another Chirrut in a way. Chirrut, obviously, when he gets rolling in Force is incredible, but this card just feels like it's going to do 4 damage back. It's going to heal the damage from your base. Any type of race situation where both players on the ground, Captain Typho is going to be incredible. So I really like him. And then the Naboo Royal Starship, in a similar vein to Unveiled Might, kind of does a similar thing. 2/5 comes out, gives your leader attack right away. So it's essentially putting, or +2 raid right away. So it's essentially putting 4 attack on the board in sort of a hasty way, or two of it are in a hasty sort of right away ambush type way, and two are waiting to sit back. The stat line's really good too. 2-5, meaning it's going to be hard to remove this unit, and then you've got your leader linked to it. I love this card in Sabine. I think it's fantastic. You get to stay in the space lane and then also buff your leader. It's kind of exactly what Sabine wants to do. If you think about just going all space with Sabine, attacking their race situation, could be even like a return to Sabine Data Vault, and then you still want to be able to lift your leader up and have her buffed. It's fantastic, and you don't run the risk of them removing the sort of upgraded card and getting 2-for-1 because your value split between two cards. So I really like all four of these cards. I'm excited to build around them. Naboo Royal Starship in Sabine, Unveiled Might in a whole bunch of decks, Topple the Summit in Kira, and Captain Typho just sort of in anything aggressive for Hero. I think he is brilliant. All right, the last one, I just want to preface this by saying I don't think this card is going to click, right? I don't think this one's going to work. I think this is going to fall into a long list of FFG leaders that kind of just sit there, they look cool for a second, and they don't see play. But Restore 4 is a lot. 5 is a little for that ability. And I don't know. We've got Data Vault. There's a lot of Restore in this set. If you think about like a full-on mill deck that is using Data Vault, that's using cards like Restock, that's using cards like Redemption, I just wonder if there's ever going to be the pivot point. Now, again, she's probably not better than Ray. Ray costs, flips on 6, restores for 3, but actually has a much stronger ability both when she's deployed and when she's pre-deployed. But I don't know. There's just something about this card with Restore 4. I'm like, I wonder if there's a way that you can just basically never take any damage. And your base has like 2 on it, and you're able to play enough removal spells, removal events to get there. So it's an interesting one, and I want to keep my eyes on it. I'm not going to do a bunch. Luckily, I've got John Tata on my team to look at cards like this. He's the Ray Master. I'm sure he's excited about Satine. Twin Sons Ray and Satine. Maybe that would be a thing as well. All right, so that's it for the spoilers that have kind of spoken to me. There's going to be a lot more coming out. I'm excited to get a full spoiler season and kind of have FFG show us new leaders and new legends, and really pumped for set 6 to drop. All right. I want to share with you a little bit about swoobase.com. So my teammate Mike Gem, Bobby Sapphire, shared this with me recently, and it is a wealth of data on this website. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Oops, I think I need to actually... Yep, there we go. So you can see here, this, when it opens up on its sort of general front page, you see a pie chart of meta shares for the last 2 weeks. So I'll move this around a little bit. So you can see last 2 weeks. And let me resize real quick, guys. There we go. It shows, that we're seeing that this rise of Boba Fett is the #1 played leader. Han Solo's right behind Quillen Boss. So the front page, tons of information just about the meta share the last 2 weeks. But there's a ton of other information. If you go to meta, you have more of a detailed analysis, all decks, the decks that top aided, the decks that, maybe are in the overall ranking system just being higher. But then if you go to the one that I think really is, you can just get lost in the sauce of data here, is matchups. So we have this matchup grid. Let me just quickly take a moment to resize this off of my PowerPoint that I was doing. And you can see going down the line, you have the ability, if you want to say, hey, what does my Boba Fett versus Cad Bane record look like? Well, it's 33 wins and 27 losses for Boba Fett. You can see that right there. You can look and you can say, what are my bad matchups? Well, it turns out that Anakin seems like a bad matchup for Boba Fett. And maybe you're losing to Boba Fett and you want to see, like, what is Boba Fett bad into, right? It looks like Sabine isn't great. Different things like that. So I think it's pretty interesting to see what what um what data you can pull from this. If you're looking at a list and you're saying like, should I try Gar Saxon? All of a sudden you're like, wait a second, Gar Saxon not great into Boba Fett. Everyone's playing Boba Fett. Maybe it's not a good choice. Like, what is holding Gar back, right? What's holding Iden back? 5-16 against Boba Fett. 5 wins, 16 losses. That's a rough matchup, but you're going to see Boba Fett at these tournaments. Kind of gives you an idea of sort of pushing down your ideas that might pop up. Like, I want to play this deck. I think this is going to be great for the week. Well, do your work, do your homework, and see if it actually is operational. I've spent some time on this site, but there's just so much to sort of poke around with and look at. You can look at leaders and base combinations. That updates things. Most of the Boba is Data Vault, right? Most of the Han is Han Blue, but you can actually look at sort of filtering this further. You can see it has the base icons here. So really a fantastic site. I definitely encourage you guys to look at it. And I wanted to share that with you all. I know in our Discord we've been using it recently, and it's been really helpful for the crew there. All right, last up is Limited. So I put this slide together because the way that I approach Limited is in other games is I look at commons and uncommons, and this is no special thing that I'm doing. I think this is something a lot of people do. And when you're getting ready for your sealed pool, which I think is your first step to preparing for Philadelphia, is there is the draft component. But you have to do well with sealed. So you want to get comfortable with the cards, and you also want to look at cards that you're excited to play, that you think are powerful cards, that you want to know. When I felt like I was good at Magic with Limited and Sealed, it was the seasons that I knew what the powerful cards did. I knew which cards I wanted, and then if I got them, if I was happy enough or lucky enough to open them in my pool, I felt supercharged. So these are some cards, not all, of the commons and uncommons that I'm excited to see when I open my 6-packs and when I get that sealed pool registration. I'll be looking forward to seeing these cards. The number one card I will tell you that I want to open is Chirrut. I think that Chirrut is polarizing and Limited, and if you get Chirrut and you get enough force units to sort of turn the force on, Secretive Sage, of course, is really up there. He can just completely turn the game. They can't attack through him. You're able to attack with all your stuff. And that's the way to win pretty easily. So I do think Chirrut is the best card, but the best uncommon and common. But there's a whole bunch of cards that I really like in Limited. There's a whole bunch of units. One of the things that I think is really important to understand in SWU is that you do need units, right? There's not a ton of removal in this set, so units and upgrades are going to be really powerful. Units that stay out there are going to be really powerful. I wouldn't overvalue sort of these cheap, aggressive units that just get dominated by a unit that might come out the next turn. So that was the first time I did a draft with this set. I had all these flyers and they got dominated by just slightly bigger units. So I think you want things that stick around. So you're looking at Internet Warrior is one with a shield. You're looking at Secretive Sage and Hadi. Those are cards that all come in with shields. Shielded units are great. And then cards that just sort of have big bulk early, right? You're looking at like the Knights of Ren, a 4/4/4/4. In Constructed is okay, but in Limited can just really take over the game. And then I think you do want to value cards like obviously your removal spells, the Will of the Force. I love that card, being able to bounce something, Protect the Pod, Shatterpoint. You're always going to play your removal spells, but I really do want to create a board state that I've got better units, and then my removal actually basically closes the game. It doesn't save the game, if that makes sense. So I want to be pushing damage. I want to be playing my ambush cards, my sticky units early, and then my ambush cards to really create a dominating board state. But in Limited, I want to be looking at cards that I just want to open, right? I want to say, hey, cool, Depa is in my pool. What's my yellow look like? I've got some good yellow. Cool, Depa works, right? I've got a Will of the Force. That's going to allow me to get to a board state where my Depa can clean something else up and dominate, right? I've got 2 Knights of Ren, and I've got an 8th brother. Let's look at green. That's a really strong power, because you're not going to get all the cards you want, right? You're not going to get 4 Mace Windu's and 4 8th brothers and all the Shinans. You're going to have pockets of cards contained within colors that have these strong cards. So if I see that my blue has, a Shatterpoint, 2 Internet Warriors, a Chirrut, and a couple Secretive Sages, I'm going to say, all right, cool. Blue is something I want to play in this pool. Do I have what's the other combination of cards? So again, there's nothing groundbreaking that I'm saying here, but I think getting first step to preparing for Philadelphia would be identifying powerful cards that you want to open your seal pool. Now, draft is more challenging. You have cards like Battle Fury and more draft strategies that you're going to be forcing or focusing on, could be forcing. But I think in limited, you want to be in sealed, excuse me, you want to be playing strong curves, units that are hard to remove, units that can remove other units and not die. The shielded units. Saboteur is an amazing mechanic. Sentinel is an amazing mechanic. Ambush is an amazing mechanic. So I'm looking at finding those cards. When played abilities of Mace Windu and Kiari Mundi just outvalue you are amazing mechanics. And then we do have to understand that Force is a big one. So Tetranek, I'm sure I butchered that name, is almost always going to be a 5/5 ambush. So that's great. And then one card I do want to highlight is there are cards that are better based upon how much synergy your deck has. So a card like Mace Windu obviously needs the Force, but he's almost always going to be a really good card regardless, right? Like he's a 6/6 for 6, and it's by 6, so you should have the Force. So he's going to be a card you don't have to have a ton of synergy. If you've got a few Force units, you're still hoping that he's on, and even if he's not, it's still a good unit. But there's some cards that really are benefited by having a lot of Force synergies or other synergies. There's the creature mechanic too. But I wanted to highlight the Paladin Training Corvette. That's a card that's not amazing unless it is amazing, right? If you've got a ton of Jedi and Force units or Force units out and you're able to curve and then just play this card and distribute a bunch of experience tokens, that's amazing, right? Imagine that in like an Obi-Wan deck where you're able to put experience counters on things and then put another wave of experience counters on things. That's great, right? So you do have to value the cards that are stronger, sort of these tribal mechanics. So I wanted to put that one sort of a little bit off to the side there. But I think there's a whole bunch of cards. There's other cards that are really good. There's a whole bunch of upgrades that are good. There's not a ton of removal. So the lightsabers can be quite strong. I think overall, I'm not sure whether there's some balloons there. I think my settings are there. But that's the video. We got the celebratory balloons. Excited to see you guys in Philadelphia. Excited to play Limited. Excited for Set 6 to drop. Swoo is awesome. I got some hate that people said I didn't like Swoo. No, I love Swoo. I just want to move to some new exciting stuff within Swoo. So that's it for now, and I will see you guys at events. And if you're in Philly, let's talk some Limited. Peace, y'all.